Hello, Megan.
Hello, Michelle.
Welcome to the Spicy Brain Podcast, where we are navigating neurodiversity with curiosity, joy, and
Radical acceptance. High kick.
So thank you for anybody who's new joining us. We know some of you guys have found Megan on Twitch, which is very exciting, and have come to join us. I know we've got a lot of people who are our Spotify subscribers and what's our other one? Is it Apple?
Apple Podcasts. I think people are listening to us through Overcast as well.
Overcast.
Which is connected to Apple Podcasts. So yeah, we've got a lot of new people listening.
So we love new listeners. And we also want to just thank everybody who's been with us since the beginning. We love you guys so much. We get so much amazing feedback. I oftentimes have people sending me little notes about things that they really enjoyed or things that they learned from listening, which obviously we're not professionals, right? Like we're just, just
sisters.
Just sisters. That's all we are. But we do like to go through and talk a lot about our neurospicy brains, and collectively we have I don't know, maybe all the alphabet soup between us.
For the most part, yeah, I think so.
We've focused a lot on ADHD, and this book, we always pick a book and we sort of go through chapter by chapter. Sometimes a chapter lasts quite a little while because we're diving deep into it. And oftentimes we go into something, neurospicy. And so this time we're really looking at this book that is around parenting. I liked I'll give the title here in just a second, but I liked your way of thinking of it. And it's called The Essential Guide to Raising Complex Kids. And we had by Elaine Taylor Klaus. And we did have a request to do a parenting book about ADHD. And I picked the complex kids because it was more than just ADHD. It's any brain-based disorder, ADHD being one of them. But you could talk about autism or dyslexia or Tourette's, any anxiety issues, sensory processing, as well as maybe even just metabolic issues. Like I have a gluten intolerance, so does my son. Juvenile diabetes, any food allergies, celiac kind of thing. So
that makes you other, anything that makes you other than society deems appropriate.
And something that's probably also going to go with you through adulthood. Right. It's not something that necessarily just goes away. It's a constant. Right. And so how do you parent your kids in this environment? So I have an 18-year-old who gave me permission, by the way, to talk about his particular thing. And you sort of took it from a different point of view as well, which maybe you could talk a little bit about.
Yeah. I just think that when you think about the term adulting, I've struggled with this word and like what it actually means. And I think that I've come to the fact that adulting means that you're parenting yourself, because ultimately what a parent is trying to teach you is how to become an adult. And so they're teaching you all these things that are going to make you successful as an adult. And I think the challenge is that even if you do have ADHD and you're raising an ADHD kid, or you have the same disorder, they all show up differently. And, I'm living with an ADHD person who also gave me permission to talk about him. But we both have, it manifests in completely different ways. So when we're adulting, our struggles are completely different from each other. And so we can appreciate each other, but, a lot of times we don't always understand each other. And we're like, what? Why is that? That's the thing? Okay. So I think when we're talking about parenting, I've actually found quite a bit in this book. I didn't think I would, but I know we had a listener who specifically asked for it. And so I just think it's actually been really cool because it's like all of these things where you want to parent your inner child. If anyone who's been through therapy, the inner child is basically the person that, it's our true self that we've kind of either been mean to. Some people have been lovely to their inner children, but like I know for me, I was not very nice to her, and I've had to atone for this, for the things I did to her in order to survive. They were definitely survival, but I find this is a good opportunity for me just to kind of remember and think about little Rosie and be like, yeah, you're okay, girl. Like, I'm sorry I did those things, and
Yeah. And I think as a parent to, my own child, as well, you have to atone as well for things that you did that you didn't, how do you make those repairs?
Mm-hmm.
When you've had a rupture, you've done something, right? Whether it was your inner child or your actual child, how do you do that? And then learning and like being curious. And that's what's been fun for me with this whole, I mean, really it's been 2 years now almost that we've been doing this podcast.
Yeah.
And we're getting closer to like our 100th episode. I mean, somebody
It's
said,
wild.
I was reading some book about podcasting when we first started, because you know me, that's always where I go to the research first because I'm the nerd. But
Love it.
I, yeah, I totally was reading and listening, and the one of them I read, it was like, what are you going to be interested in talking about? Like it's your
Mm.
dissertation essentially. It's kind of this
Yeah.
thing you're going to keep having to talk about, and I'm thinking, what's the structure going to be so that we keep being interested? And so I really find listening to other people, reading other books, and then kind of breaking them apart and making them our own has been really, really amazing. And this book, it we're still really in the first chapter. We've had to go by tracks because you and I both listen to the books oftentimes, and
Mm-hmm.
then I take copious notes and then I bring them up to you and
No,
send
it's
them to you.
great because then I
You
get to like see the
read my
notes in
read.
front of me.
Yeah, you can kind of see what I'm saying. We kind of figured that out in the podcast too. That
Yeah.
really helped if you could see what it was I had been taking notes on. So this particular one, and just for anybody who's new to us too, we usually talk about the book. We talk about a little story, sometimes related to it. We try to dig into that brain of either Meg's or mine, depending on what hits for us, and then we try to come up with suggestions. But sometimes we're in the muck too, and we don't have any, or what we're reading doesn't speak to us necessarily. So sometimes we come to it like 3 episodes later. So
Yeah.
just that's what we try to do, but it doesn't always work out. Um, so we've been talking a lot in this particular book, just framing these challenges, that challenge areas, and how challenging it can be for us as parents. There were these 6 challenge areas we talked about, things like home and friendship, and making sure that you're picking one area that you're focusing on at a time, whether it's your inner child or your actual child, right?
Yeah.
What is the thing that's most pressing right now? In different ages, I think, and different seasons of our life, different areas could be more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
But part of the problem with these areas is that it gets really into the shoulds. And we started talking about this before, the shoulds, all the things you should be doing. And I think she says it and you say this all the time, but that, you're shoulding all over yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so part of this reframing piece that she's talking about is it's right that you want to be seen as a good parent. Like it's makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in doing that, you have to be aware of like, oh, you must do it this way. You need to do it this way. So she has a sort of like list of words. And she's like, notice like your feelings about this, the shoulds, leads to the way you act.
Mm.
And I thought that was interesting. Like when you're saying you should do this, you ought to do this, you have to, like those words really cause a certain kind of feeling. And I thought we could kind of pinpoint on that for a minute and just sort of
Mm.
think about that for ourselves. Because she said you got to be aware of doing something out of embarrassment or shame.
Mm.
And like I think about that as a parent all the time. Am I insisting that Josh does this or that because I'm embarrassed? Especially like I just think when he was a toddler, for example, like you're
Yeah.
in I had it today, actually. I was at, Trader Joe's, and there was a mom there and her kid was just losing it. And they were about a year and a half. And I had my AirPods in, so I didn't really notice the kid. I didn't hear the kid. I was
Mm-hmm.
listening to my music, but I looked around and I saw these faces of people staring at her and the kid.
Ugh.
And that I remember feeling like this sense of like either embarrassment or maybe it was, I don't know, but it was something like I was supposed to be doing something to get that kid to stop,
Mm-hmm.
right? To get Josh to stop. So that need to, you ought to have that kid in control, right? You have to get this kid to be quiet. You should have already figured out that it was their nap time and not taken them to the Trader Joe's, whatever
Yeah.
it is that's in your head, right? So I don't know how that completely relates to the inner child, but I figured we could kind of think about that a little bit because that feeling then leads to actions, right? So when you see somebody yank their kid's arm,
Mm-hmm.
right, and try to get them to be quiet, or and she didn't. She was very, very calm. She did. I probably was like one of those, I don't know. She got trained by some like Buddhist monk to be a to be a mom or something. She was very calm with the kid, just got right down to their level, did all the things that I can imagine a book probably tells you to
Or
do.
she just had a nap, Michelle. That's all.
Yeah. She
she
had
she was just in a good state in that specific moment, but like catch her tomorrow and she's like, I will kill this child.
right, right. I was impressed by her, but yes, absolutely. Any moment you can have a good moment as a parent, right, is a good thing. But yeah, so I don't know. I didn't know if
You
you could
know,
relate to that with the inner child part.
I well, what I first was hit with is that this idea that you want to rightfully be seen as a good parent.
Mm.
And the idea that, to be seen as a good parent versus to be a good parent are two
Mm.
different things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, because like I'm sure there's all these shoulds that it's again like it's other, right? So if you're in the grocery store, how often are there people having like giant meltdowns? It's rare, but it does happen. And so I think that
Sure.
other is the fascinating part of like why we should all over ourselves. And then
Mm.
I think we do it
Wait, say
as
more about that. Say more about
mm,
that. The other is the reason we do it?
yeah, because there's these societal expectations that when you walk into a grocery store, certain mood is going to be set, certain, people
Mm.
walk a certain way, they talk a certain way. Like if you have somebody who's just like taking let's say one of those grocery what are those things? Grocery cart? If you take a
Part?
grocery cart and they're just like speed racing down the aisles, that's other.
Mm. Mm.
If someone's got their music playing, that's other. There's like all these things that are like considered rude
Mm.
because it's not following in societal's norm. And
Mhm.
so when a child is screaming, it's like you better get that kid under control because that's other and you're messing up my day. And it's
Mm.
like, okay, so I messed up your day for a few minutes. Like, it says more about
Right.
the person's. I think honestly, like the shame, like the look on the people's face, it says more about them than it does about the kid.
Oh,
But
100%. 100%, that's true. Yeah.
but we've done this where it's like we've said, okay, this is what we have deemed as the norm, the expectation, and so anything other than that is going to be shunned. And
Yeah, that makes sense.
it goes down to like even just like the way that you look or how you dress or the
Mhm.
color of your skin or whatever it is. It's like there's always a way to otherize people,
Yeah.
and it really makes me sad. And then I think it does translate in the like adulting part because it's like, okay, to be an adult, these are the 10 things that you need to be. This is the way
Mhm.
that you can become a full-fledged adult. And so then I am just shitting all over myself because I'm like, well, I don't do half of those things. Like I don't fold my underwear. I don't, half the time I don't remember even like put the stuff in the dryer, like I
Yeah.
don't like there's all these things that I don't do, but just like there's a lot of things that you don't eat. And
Mm.
if like when you're thinking about your gluten intolerance, it's like when you first went gluten free, they said don't think about all the things that you can't eat. Think about the things that you can.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's kind of similar. It's like with all of this, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of things that like I don't do well or I can't do because of my ADHD, but there's so many things that I do really well.
Yeah.
And we're just not taught that is adulting. We're not taught
Mhm.
that like oh, if I accept myself and I'm kind to myself, that's an adult thing to do. You know,
Right. Yeah.
I have dogs that that are very well fed and trained and and that's a good thing, but like that's not considered being a good adult in the like big giant air quotes of what's normal.
That you could train dogs well.
Yeah, like that might, well, I mean,
Yeah.
I've met, how many adults have I met that I would consider an adult and their dog is like completely overweight?
Mm.
And, you know, is that healthy for the dog? No. But like, am I going to shame that person? No, because that's like, they're doing them and that's what they're doing. But like, I'm able to have
Right.
like a very, I don't know why I'm getting off on this part, but like, I do. I'm able to have like a very healthy pug. Cause like, I have pugs, people, and
Yeah.
most pugs are like really fat and
Uh-huh.
overweight and
Yeah.
unhealthy. And everyone always is like, oh my God, your pugs are so like svelte and they have like great muscle tone. I'm like, yeah, I take them out for walks twice a day and I take them on, I feed them well and I don't like indulge in their every whim of wanting food at every freaking moment of the day, which
Because they will eat themselves
they
to death for
will.
sure. So, okay, so I want to go back to something she said though to see if this relates or if you find this makes sense. So, the actual quote was you rightfully want to be seen as a good parent, but in the process, are you losing sight of what is most important to you?
Yeah, the kid.
Yeah. And this is exactly what she says. Notice your child. Beware of covering up the challenges or problems that they say they're having
Mm.
to look like they're a quote unquote good kid.
Mm.
So beware them covering up their challenges, their problems,
Masking.
and masking. And I was like thinking about this. So, and I was trying to think like, what problems would I have masked
Mm.
right as a kid? So I was thinking like for myself, what, endless things I masked about. And I masked a lot about my inability to spell.
Mm.
And I had a lot of anxiety around that. And I would do all kinds of things to try to cover up that I wasn't, that I think basically that I was dyslexic, right? Like I was
Mm-hmm.
finding ways to hide it.
Yeah, I had
And it
no
took,
idea that you didn't know how to
yeah.
spell until we did this. I mean, it's like I was this many years old, 2 years ago when I learned that you couldn't spell. I was like, what? But you're so in. What do you mean you can't spell? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really tough right now. Like I'm definitely like in this mode of I have to always tell people
Mm,
like at work, I'm like, so I'm dyslexic, so I might spell something wrong and I need you to let me know if I do. And I work with
yeah.
mathematicians, so they're very exacting, like
Yeah.
crazy, crazy exacting. And it was really difficult for me growing up too because like our mom's really good at spelling, like insanely good
Yeah.
at spelling. So I had a friend the other day say, "Okay, Michelle," and they were just kind of being silly, right? But they're like, "Spell image and then put your hands over your head like this, like a little oval shape over your head."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "I am a G," and I spelled imagine,
Mm.
Gine. And they're like, "Nope, not quite." And it was like a math person, right? So I said it again finally, and it was like, "I am a," and I'm like starting to sweat. I'm like starting to be like, "Oh my God," like I'm at the freaking spelling bee and I'm like panicking and I'm like in Mrs. Longo's room, like, "Oh my God." And then I'm like, "I am a G E." And then they were like, "No, no, but say it faster." And I'm like tortured right now, right? They don't know this, but I'm like tortured at this point. I'm like, "I am a GE." And then it was supposed to be like, "I am
Uh-huh.
a
And
GE,"
a,
like light bulb. And like I was supposed to be the light bulb
a G.
or
Yeah, I was trying
something,
to feel like, what
a
is GE?
GE.
Like, is
And
it trying to
I
say
don't,
egg?
and I was like,
Are they
"Oh
trying
my
to?
God." I literally was like having like heart palpitations. So and I've told this person that I struggle with this, but they don't really get it, right? Because it's
Yeah.
not their struggle, which is always how it is in life, right? Like it's so hard you just have to be so curious to figure out somebody else's struggle. But anyway, I was thinking about like all the things I would have masked over the years
Yeah.
and how hard I had to work to be like I remember looking at the word saw, like SAW one time and I just was like it just didn't look right. I couldn't get it to
Mm-hmm.
look right. And I would constantly go back and go back and go back and read and read and read and read and read and try to get it so that things would go the right direction. And still to this day, like if I let my eyes do whatever they want to do, they're all over the page. There's
Mm.
no rhyme or reason to like what the words are saying. I have to be so um, focused. Now, because of that, I'm actually a really good editor
Mm.
now, right? But I mean, when I'm editing my staff's work and stuff, because I'm like, they're not going to be able to read this. This needs more bullets. This needs
Yeah.
this. Like, I know what they're going to need for their eyes to follow it. But
Yeah.
so I was kind of curious for you what you think about like this idea: beware them covering up challenges or problems to look so that they look like they're a quote unquote good kid.
Well, I do think that that is a huge issue. And when you were saying the word saw, I was thinking about the fact that I have like a different side of that where like I'll say the word saw. And if I say it enough times over and over and over again in my head, the word just doesn't make sense anymore to me. I'm like, is that actually a real word? And it
Yeah.
just goes out of my head. But another thing that I was thinking about was that you were saying that you've told this person before that you have dyslexic issues,
Mhm.
and it's so true. It's like if someone is not living your life, like it's going to be hard for them to remember.
Yeah.
And I had this
And
even with Brian, like,
it wasn't out of any kind of
no,
malice. There was no malintent.
no,
The intention was
because
just to be funny, to be silly, you know?
right.
Mhm.
And I have like, that's the thing is like, uh, I have ADHD and Brian has ADHD. And now it's like, I will say things and I'll do something. And I'm like, and he's like, yeah, I can't because that's my ADHD. And I'm just like, oh, right. I forgot, and it's like, so I think that's the first thing is that like, as a person with a complex or disorder, complex condition, um, give grace to the people around you because
Yeah.
I know like for me in the past it's been a real trigger for me when people don't remember because I think they don't care. And it's not that they
Mhm.
don't care, it's just that they don't live with it full time. So like, if I'm in physical pain, no one knows I'm in physical pain unless I say it out loud. And it
Mhm.
gets redundant after every day. You're like, I have to say it every single day. And like sometimes, yeah, you do. You have to say it until it becomes regular to somebody. Um, but
And how does it not just that you say it, but it's like, how did this moment interact with your disorder? How is this specific thing, right? Like, it's almost you have to peel away the onion layer. Like, okay, when I'm asked to verbally spell, like when else are you asked to verbally spell in your life, right? Other than a
I
spelling
know
bee on purpose, right?
exactly.
So it's like, yeah, no impromptu spelling bees, okay? Like that's like our first little rule. But secondly, I think you have to tell them like what happened and how it felt, right? Which is hard for
Well, and
kids to do, I think, too.
that's why the
Like young
repair,
kids, right?
yeah, and that's why the repair is so important because like you can tell me that and I will not remember it. And it's not because I don't want to, but like I could just imagine whoever this person was, like they got a kick out of it because someone came up to them and said, do this. And then they're like, oh my gosh, that's the funniest thing ever. And like the
Yeah.
cool thing is that the first instinct was like, I want to go tell Michelle, this is
Yeah.
amazing. But
Yeah.
then the second instinct is like, oh, this actually wasn't a good thing for Michelle. I wasn't thinking about, I was just thinking like, oh, I want to tell Michelle. I wasn't
Yeah,
thinking
you
like,
weren't
is
thinking
this a
like, "Oh,
good
by the
thing
way,
for
my
Michelle?
dyslexic friend Michelle." You weren't saying like,
Yes.
yeah, you weren't putting this
Yeah. Cause like
adjective in front of me. Yeah.
I'm not like labeling you my dyslexic friend Michelle every single time I see you. So
Right.
I think that that's where like the repair is super important because when like with kids, especially and if you are like for me, if I'm ADHD, I learned that if I just was quiet,
Mm.
that people were so grateful I was quiet. And they're like, "Oh,
Mhm.
thank God. She's just being calm for once." And so I learned to mask and I learned to not to like sit on the things that I really shouldn't have been sitting on. And that's like where my inner
Could
child
you
got
give an
hurt.
example of like that? Like an inner you were sitting
Um
you were sitting I'm sorry, and I interrupted you, but you were sitting on things you shouldn't have been sitting on. And you mean emotionally.
yeah, like I was sitting with, sorry, I should say I was sitting with things like if there's a phrase that just tickles my fancy, I love to just say it over and over again and repeat
Yes,
it.
you
I
do.
love it. It
You
just feels
do.
so good in the mouth. It rolls around and it's like, yes, I just need to say it multiple times. And that was not like always the most, like people thought I was crazy. They thought I was nuts. And again, we didn't have a lot of,
Yeah. Other terms.
yeah, we just didn't have the information we have now.
Mhm.
So what I learned was that if I didn't do it, I actually got the attention that I was looking for,
Mm.
and I got the praise that I had so desperately needed, where it was
Mhm.
like, oh, Megan, like this was such a fun, like, we'd watch a movie and I was like, oh, we had such a great time watching a movie with you, Megan. And so in my head, I thought, oh, well, last time we didn't have a good time watching the movie because I started saying that phrase over and over and over again and I drove everyone crazy. But this time I didn't do that. So that must mean I have to stop being myself in order for us to have a good time, because I want to have a good time with my family.
Yeah.
So I have to change who I am.
Yeah.
And that was the only logical solution. It was like, I just have to change and I have to sit on this thing. I
Mhm.
have to like, and I have the impulse. I had the impulse. The impulse is there every time. And I'm like, but then what happened was, for
Mhm.
me, the impulse just kind of kept getting shoved further and further down. And then it came out in these like movements, these physical movement disorder. It comes
Mhm.
out of you eventually.
It's just where and
Like,
how.
yeah, and like sitting, shaking my feet. Like I always like would just have my feet constantly moving, and mom would put her hand on my knee, and I was like, oh right, I'm not supposed to do that, especially during church, especially during church.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But it was like everybody. I had the teachers always telling me like, Miss Mayadeski, you need to, like, you're making a lot of noise with your foot and all of those things. So like I would just sit on it, and I knew that it wasn't okay. And so I had to like literally docile myself. That's not a phrase. That's not a real word, but I had to docile myself.
Almost like sedate yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm thinking about that when you're saying that, and I'm thinking like as a parent, the things that I might have, I mean not might have, that I did kind of like squash in Josh, or like tried to like help him to know that that wasn't going to be, helpful or whatever. And I remember the other day, it was just the other day, and I said, I'm like, oh, Josh, like I just needed you to get here. You were late and I was tired. I hadn't eaten. And it was like maybe, I don't know, 5:30 or something. And he had my car and he was coming to get me. And he
Mm-hmm.
goes, well, Mom, I'm just going to continue to disappoint you. And I was
Mm,
like, like there's nothing that can change about this. I'm just going to continue to be a disappointment, is how he
yeah.
said it. Not disappoint you. I'm just going to continue to be a disappointment. And, it's hard sometimes when the shoulds are something you need. Like, as a parent, you need something, and your kid is connected to that in some way, whether it's they're supposed to provide it or not,
Mm-hmm.
that it's difficult to sometimes navigate your own humanity, your own frustrations or disappointments that you have about whatever it was that you wanted to have happen that didn't happen.
Mm.
And so it was an interesting moment of like, the, of she says in here, the first thing you need to is identify the source of the shoulds. And in that case, the source of the shoulds was my stomach. It was like, felt like that, right? It felt like my own basic needs weren't being met. And yet there was a situation that had been started earlier in the day with him needing my car,
Mm.
right? That could have maybe been different, because I know if as soon as he gets home, he's going to take a nap because he's exhausted after school, and he's going to forget to set his alarm. And then the spiral of all the things after it are almost predicted. They're like almost written in stone that it's very likely it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, like, the other thing she says in this is like, you need to like kind of change your language, reflect on it. Um, and like not holding on to resentment is another piece she talks about. And I was just thinking in that particular scenario, it was like what he was saying was so um, off the cuff almost, like he threw it away. It was a little throwaway comment. And yet it was so deep and so ingrained and something that he obviously has felt throughout his life, either with me or others, again and again.
Yeah. I think this is the challenge because like I know that flippant remark. I make it I've made it a lot in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see I see both sides of this, right? Like I see that like there is validity to what he's saying about feeling like he's always going to disappoint. And I also see the validity of like you were hungry in that moment and like you shouldn't have to like your basic
Right.
needs needed to be met, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
both things are true.
Right.
I
Right.
think this is where the challenge is that like when we as parents and even with our like okay, I'll just take it for myself because like that's all I can go with. When I am shooting all over myself with things that really truly don't matter in the long run, but I'm still shooting on myself, then the times that I really need to shit on myself for like legitimate reasons feel like a continuation of all these other things that just didn't make sense. And
Right.
it's like, you've always told me like with, when like dealing with my stepdaughter, it's like choose your battles wisely. Like, where are you
Mm-hmm.
gonna fall on your sword and like what thing is really that needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um and it's like, look, okay, if you're gonna borrow my car and
Mm-hmm.
and like you're gonna like and you're gonna pick me up, then like there are certain things that yes you are going to have to do. So like this specific conversation is very different than like the actual flippant remark that he made. Like I feel like there's two issues happening. There's the very
Mm-hmm.
real issue
Yeah.
of like, look, if you're gonna borrow my car, which you have your own car, so obviously you don't want to spend money on gas, cool. If you're gonna borrow my car, then you have to figure out how you're going to be an adult and how you're going to parent yourself so that you can come pick me up on time.
Well,
That's
let's
like a
go back a
legitimate,
second. Let's go
yeah.
back a second. I asked him to come half an hour earlier than we had decided because I got done
Right.
early. And he was asleep
Yeah.
and then said he was coming and then went back to sleep, right? That was exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So, on the way home, by the way, for everyone to know, because this is where the shoulds also are in there.
Mm-hmm.
I was a nightmare. Okay, I I was
Mm-hmm.
hungry and tired and I was having none of it. And he said the remark and when he said it, I was like, "Oh," you know. But also it's a little bit of a manipulation, right? So we then decided after that together, we like got in, I got fed, everything, right? Got kind of cleared up and I came back and I was like, I think it's best for our relationship if you take your own car to school. And
Yeah.
he was like, I would agree. And I was like, great. So you have enough money, like you're working, you can do this. And he's like, yes. And I was like, good. And that, I think, kind of when you look at the whole kind of going back and forth of it, the part that's still hard as a parent is like, ugh, I wish I was never ever cross or I was never ever whatever, right? Like just
Mm.
fill in the gaps. Like I should have been more, I should have been this, I should have like whatever. I should have had that conversation about the car weeks ago or whatever and then this never would have happened. So I think there's a lot of playing back things.
Mm.
Like sometimes you're having a whole conversation and she says this in the book that she and her husband he wrote a blog and he was like we had an entire conversation in my head
Yeah.
and he never had it with her and so all these resentments built up but I feel like that I do that since I don't have a partner it's I'm divorced and so I'm having this whole conversation in my head of like again and again around like these interactions I've had with Josh to try to, like, I don't know if it's sort of like trying to self-soothe or trying to process it or whatever it was, but there's a
Mm.
lot of shoulds that I think come up, and I'm curious if other parents do this as well. I know some of my girlfriends do, but you just end up spending a lot of energy kind of being mean to yourself as a parent when really, like, you know, he said he was gonna do something and he didn't do it,
Yeah.
and it's okay to be like, "Yeah, that one,
I mean, Michelle,
is it."
this is around any
Yeah.
relationship. Like that's the thing. It's not just
Mhm.
about parents. Like I did
Sure.
this the other day when I was at the aquarium, and
Mhm.
I'm starting to finally get comfortable there as a volunteer.
Aw.
And this guy, I was working on my little Rosie. I do drawing now, so I can like keep. They do lectures to train us, and so I do use it
Mhm.
as a way to help me stay focused. And so one of these guys who like takes care of everything, he comes over and he sees my drawing. He says, he's like, show off. And then and he's like a very sarcastic, funny guy, very dry sense of humor. And so then he comes back to me, or I stop him and I said something like, well, I just had to show you who's boss, and that was like my little
Mm.
sassy retort. But then I didn't get the response that I was thinking I was going to get from him. And so then I started replaying that
Yeah.
interaction back in my head over and over and over again. I'm like, oh my God, Megan, why did you say that? Why? Like, I mean, you could have said
Yeah.
anything else. Like, you stopped him, like he was doing something else. Like, and I was just shitting
Yeah.
all over myself in that moment. And then it
Mhm.
turns out he comes back later and he's like, what was it that you said? Because I didn't get a chance to hear it. I was like, oh, I told you it was,
Oh.
like, it's just letting you know who was boss. It's like, I thought that's what you said. Okay.
Totally heard what you said. He just wanted to make
Totally
sure
did.
he yeah. It's
So
so
I think that
interesting.
I think that there's a difference though. Like, I think there's two sets of shoulds happening in the scenario that you're talking about, Michelle.
Okay.
Because there's the shoulding that you, Michelle, are doing to yourself.
Yes.
And then there's like the historical shoulding that you might have been doing to Josh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're two separate things. There's both sets of shoulds. they're
Yeah.
just they're just they just smell different probably.
Different kinds of stanky.
You know,
So
from different diets.
she says this, and I thought this would be interesting to really like shed the shoulds. She's saying really reflect on your values, like reflect on what is most important to you, what you stand for, and sort of like what gives your life meaning.
Mhm.
And I was trying to think like the best guide to making decisions on what's most important as a parent and the most powerful way to shed the shoulds. And I was like, okay, so my value system is really about staying connected with my kid. Like
Mhm.
that's always like I'm always going to fall on my sword for that over anything else. Whether it's, friendships, financial decisions, all of that. I like whatever. I purchased Fubo again, by the way, Megan.
Oh,
This today.
really?
Yeah, so you have access to. But anyway, so I purchased
Exciting.
Fubo because I was like he, loves watching the Suns, Phoenix Suns, and it was the like best way for us because we don't have cable in a traditional sense. And so like great. And I'm gonna that's a financial decision. That means I can't do something else because it's,
Mhm.
a certain amount a month. So I think there's this idea of like whatever your value system is, it makes it easier to know, but I've never thought about it around the shoulds. Like
Mm.
I value my own mental health. I value my own personal health. I value my relationship with my family. And
Yeah.
when I do all this shoulding, that actually is wasted energy
Mhm.
in a way, right? Like it's like it's not,
Yeah.
it's like natural, I guess, for me to do it or whatever. And so it's not to like beat myself up or beating myself up, you know. but but this idea of like, okay, maybe once is enough.
Yeah.
Maybe saying it once to yourself is like, okay, yeah, that would have been oh yeah. What's the thing you say after I should
What's
have,
the
right? Like
repair?
what's the repair with yourself and also with your kid if it happens to be something. So like did it matter that you had both shoes on before you went in the car for carpool?
I
Oh,
totally saw a kid yesterday at the aquarium
yeah.
whose shoes were on backwards. And I was like, yes, queen, I am here for you. And I actually talked to the father about it. I was like, I love the fact that her shoes are on the wrong feet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like, yeah. I was like, because that was me as a kid. And honestly,
Mhm.
like the fact that they are the same shoe is absolutely incredible. And he's like, that's true. Yeah. Like we normally can't find the right shoe. Like we're looking for it. I was like, you know what? I mean, just
It's
get
all
some shoes
good.
on the kid. It doesn't matter. Like you did a great
Right.
job, you know?
Yeah. And if
But
they're not uncomfortable, then okay.
yeah, what does it matter? What is it? Yeah. If
Right.
the kid's not uncomfortable, you
Yeah.
know,
It's gonna
but
be
you know,
self-correcting eventually if they
yeah,
want it to be, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
But then like,
Yeah.
I think the shoulds that you're talking about for yourself, like there is a part of replaying over and over again. And I think that it's a tough one because like part of it, I mean, that's why a lot of times like I have someone to process that with
Mhm.
because but I think that ultimately when it comes to life, like the only way you know if you're doing it right is if you're living. And you learn so much just by doing it wrong
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
and repairing.
Every day. Yeah.
Because in my mind, when you said,
Mhm.
okay, what do I value? I'm like, well, you value time with your kids. So you're thinking, great, yeah, take my car because then I'll have time to spend with you on the drive home and it'll be lovely. And we'll get to share together. And that
Mhm.
was what you were thinking, and most likely. And so
Yeah.
then when you realize, like, that's actually not a good way to spend our time together, then a boundary can get put down. Um, I also think though that like going back to his flippant response is
Mhm.
really interesting and very
Mm.
telling
Mm.
because he might be shooting all over himself even when you
Oh,
don't
yeah.
think you're like even when you're not doing it.
You're not doing it even, but although I was that day for
Yeah.
sure. So, but other times, no, like he will, yes, he's extremely hard on himself. And that's part of the gut punch of that is like it, he'll say things like he doesn't care when
Mhm.
when he's done something that he knows has upset me because he feels it so deeply.
Cuz he does care.
'Cause he
Yeah.
does care so much, and he doesn't wanna disappoint me, and so it's also hard sometimes to navigate that as a parent, I think, of a complex kid because, you know, y your own humanity in all of this is there's almost no room for it sometimes, right? There's no
Mhm.
room it feels like that anyway, like, there's no room to have a reaction, and so I'm always saying, like, my reaction, you know and part of it is I think to some degree, something you have to look at I have to look at within myself when I'm
Yeah.
having a reaction to something like, why am I having this reaction, right? And I think it does come to like embarrassment or shame or worry, concern, whatever it is. And am I worried and concerned about the right things? Is
Mhm.
this reaction because of something I'm worried about for him in the future? Is it something that I'm worried about how other people are perceiving me as a parent? Is it I'm having this reaction because it's triggering something in me from my
Yeah.
childhood, right? And like those are things that, like you said, having somebody to parse those things out with is really helpful. That can help you navigate through those sometimes. We
And
always
him
recommend that.
too.
And him too.
That's the thing is
Yeah.
like, when you're talking about um him having that feeling like he's hurt you and he says like I don't care, and
Mhm.
he's trying to find a way to make it okay in himself and like it sounds like in my opinion it sounds like he needs to talk that through. And that's the part where I would say like there was this thing that I think we were talking where Elaine Cross was saying that you have to be careful to not lose sight of these little small things, like to let them kind of slide. And in my mind, like when things are so, for me at least, when things are so emotionally tough, I do the same thing. I'm like, well, it doesn't matter anyways. Like, and I felt myself doing that with this guy this weekend when I said
Mm,
the thing. I was like, well, it doesn't matter anyways, because he's just, I mean, who is he? And blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I had to stop and say, okay, no, you're just a little embarrassed and
mhm.
you can always repair. And this is not going to be the end of the world. This is not going to be the end of any, like, you're not going to I think my natural instinct was, I was like, oh, he's going to hate me. And then I'm not going to be able to ever volunteer again. And it'll all be
Yes.
over because of this one
The
stupid comment that I
catastrophizing
make.
piece of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Which
think
I
that's true for
wouldn't,
our kids. Like they do that, right? Like
yeah.
oftentimes, like they take something that you've said that's maybe really small, and then they like take it out to the like logical, illogical conclusion. And so sometimes
Yeah.
there's a rabbit hole they've gone down that you don't, especially with kids who are ADHD. Like the rabbit
Yeah.
hole is real and quick.
You wouldn't even
Yeah.
know that they've gone down it. And you didn't think that you were stepping on this landmine.
And
And
yeah, you weren't trying to get them to go down a rabbit hole of any kind,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
And so I think that's the hard part, right? Like it has nothing to do with you, but
Mm.
it is something that you might have control over helping him learn about. And
Right.
it's like, and it's just something that like until his prefrontal cortex is fully developed, it's going to be really hard for him. And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's not, I mean, there's
And
just too
if
much
you think about
hormonally
also
going on.
developmentally, like in general, they've sort of kind of, I don't categorize as like 3 years, that the emotional maturity piece of it is about
Hmm.
3 years different for kids with ADHD. That,
Yeah.
like, if you think about where they are developmentally, that's why, like, I never regret keeping him back a year, because that I think gave him another year. Like, I just think about him now and where he was last year. And if he had graduated last year and had to go to college last year, I just think, oh my gosh, I don't know, if he would have been completely as ready as he is now. Like, I'm not saying he couldn't have done it, but there's a lot of
Yeah.
things going on in our lives at that time. So it was just helpful to have another year for a lot of reasons. But I just think it's hard when you're also these developmental milestones. You as a parent are trying to, you think you're supposed to, your kid should be ready for whatever. And even saying
Yeah.
3 years behind means there's a norm, like you
Yeah.
said, that not being met. And so you're taught to hide all these things about yourself. And as parents, I think also we hide. We hide sort of away from other parents because there's a lot of judgment and things that are on you.
Hmm.
And so I think it's hard to, she talks about this in this book, that this idea of that you don't get to connect with other parents in the same way necessarily as you might want to. And yet she ended up with her kids being at a high school that was smaller but had all kids who had similar sort of issues going on. And so
Mm.
she was like, we were at this graduation and we didn't know anybody there really, like the other parents didn't know each other, but that they were all this tribe of parents who were totally devoted to their kids and trying, all understood the nature of raising complex kids. And I thought how sad it is to not have somebody to talk to about it, right? Like I
Hmm.
didn't have that particularly. I had you, which was so helpful, but I didn't have a real core group of other moms and dads who understood what I was, dealing with. And I think to me, and in fact, I don't think I even knew completely what I was dealing with, even though I knew you and I
Hmm.
should have figured it out. Should, right? Like I
Hmm.
felt like I should have known because I've had you and we are talking about this for 2 years. And yet still, Josh doesn't have an official diagnosis. He has a pseudo diagnosis and he needs his official one. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of this process that I think, and I can hear the very firm but loving, he needs someone to talk to, that you're telling me, and I know you have a very strong opinion about it. So I and not opinion, but you have vested interest in making sure that your nephew is okay. And that is another thing that's hard as a parent, is that
Yeah.
everyone thinks they know what needs to be done for you and your kid, and oftentimes they're right, and yet you're having to navigate all the financial concerns, all the
Hmm.
real struggles that we all go through. So it's a tough one. This one was a tough one for me today because I think I feel it deeply,
Mm.
that it's, she's not wrong, but the process of letting it go, of shedding the shoulds, I think is really, really tough for me.
Yeah. And I think it just starts with talking about it. I mean, I think that personally, I think that's the way. It's like just saying it out loud and like helping him, like, hey, I heard this phrase from you, and like being curious about it. Like, I heard you say this and I'm curious, like, what that means to you, and like how, like, where does, say more, tell me more about
Mm.
it, because I think a lot of times, like, I don't even realize that I'm saying something until someone points it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even always know what I'm thinking until I kind of talk it out with someone.
Yeah, and I think this idea of that maybe they're not really covering up their challenges or problems as much as we think they are.
Mm,
Maybe they're saying it to you right there, and
yeah.
it's just in passing those. So you gotta like keep your ear to the ground with it. You know what I mean? It's like they're saying it to you. It's just being I think present enough. I mean, there's so much going on in the lives of parents, right? And
Yeah.
if you're parenting yourself, so much life going on in your own life, right? So there's like just the noise, the din, right, of the constant noise of life
Yeah.
happening all around you. And so this idea that you're going to hear this one little phrase and maybe it sticks with you and maybe that's when the shoulds come in is maybe just that time to get curious about it as opposed to beating yourself up about it, right? Like that's what I'm hearing from what you're saying to me. It's like that time to kind of dig in and be curious like we do on the podcast, like get in and like just listen a little bit more and ask a little bit more. And what the answer to me when you're talking with me about it is there's a lot of ways to go about things, but I think
Yeah.
a really important one is to get help. And like Josh has an ADHD coach and he's been
Mm-hmm.
super helpful. But all of that's expensive, right? And
Yeah.
getting diagnosed is expensive. And these things, sometimes people don't have the resources to do things in the time frame that they would want to.
Yeah.
And it's tough, I mean, so I really respect anybody who's out there like just getting those things done, putting that as the first thing maybe that they can do. I know for me, we had to make a decision helping some family that, caused us to not have the finances I needed to be able to get the diagnosis done this year. So it's just something that I have to work on and work towards, but it's tough, and it feels like I should have already done it,
Mm,
feels like it should have already been taken care of. I should have, right? And it's just
yeah.
way too easy to get back into the shoulds versus like one thing I feel really proud of is my connection with Josh. And I
Yeah.
think that I've worked really hard on that. So, you know what I mean? I say those things and I don't say them lightly because I just feel like I feel the pain of other parents who are going through this because you love them
Yeah.
and you want to make sure that you're doing everything you can, but sometimes there's limits and you have limitations.
Yeah. And I think it just always comes back to what she said about be aware of, what's important to you. What is the most important thing? Like, don't lose sight of what's important to you. And so when you as a parent or me as an adult are shitting all over ourselves, um, however however we can help ourselves to kind of check and remind ourselves what's most important. I think that's kind of like the idea of not getting in your time capsule and going backwards or forwards. Like, what's the
Mhm.
most important thing? And if you're shitting all over yourself, it's probably because like you need to process and figure out, okay, what's most important to me right now, and how does that fit in? And so if you can do that in your head, that's fantastic. If you need to like talk to somebody, that's fantastic. If you need to write it out, whatever the way that you need to figure it out, like just, when your brain is mulling over and over and over on something, it's usually because there's something we have to figure out. And so I would say go back to what's most important to you. And where does this should fit in? Because sometimes the should is important. Sometimes it really is like you should, not step out into traffic without looking both ways. Like sometimes it's really important. So, figuring that out for yourself, I think is such an important part of that. But also it means you have to like feel it. and you have to have time to feel it. And sometimes like when you're in the middle of the muck, like there's no time to feel it. Like you're hungry, you're ready, like you've been working all day, like you just don't have time in that moment. And that's okay. You're a human. And that's the thing I want to tell you is like, Michelle, you're human. I want to tell myself I'm human because like I mess up parenting myself every fucking day. And a lot of times I just don't want to feel it. But
Yeah.
it's, every
I
day
don't
is
know.
a
I
new
don't
day.
think there's like an option not to feel it as a parent. I think oftentimes, like for me, like I feel it all the time, all day long. So I think it's about like figuring out what to do with the feelings, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like if feelings lead to actions and I'm stuck in this space for too long, then the way I'm treating Josh or the way I'm treating myself probably isn't very good. Right. And I don't like that. I'm bringing this moment up because it doesn't feel like this every second with him by any
Yeah.
stretch of the imagination. So I'm just like deep in this particular moment with you
Mm-hmm.
for the podcast. Right.
Yeah.
But so I mean, I just want to be clear on that. Like, it's not like all day long I'm like, oh my God, this whole thing. But you have these moments and they tend to be dramatic oftentimes or feel dramatic. I guess they aren't really because you always tell me life isn't really that dramatic. But when like for a drama, for a play purposes, like it wouldn't
Yeah.
be, play written about this particular moment between us, Josh and I. But I think the idea that you don't always have time to process it, and this podcast has given us both time, I think, to process things in our lives that like we wouldn't normally spend that much time on necessarily. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe you are different than me, that I shouldn't speak for you, but for me, like I
No, I
wouldn't
mean,
have that time normally.
and I think that's what I was trying to say is that like these feelings, you don't really have time to process them.
Mm-hmm.
That you're having them, and so you're just a lot of times you just have to go on instinct, and your action is not necessarily fully thought through or fully processed.
No, yes,
And
absolutely.
in the military world, when they're talking about resiliency, they say, look, there's the ABCs of your actions. Your initial response, you don't have control over, which is A, but you do have control over B. You have control over what you do second and what you do third.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me always makes sense. It's like we have all of these feelings that we're going through and we don't have the time to physically process them. So we make actions and we take action on things. And then, if you're shitting all over yourself, then it's probably a, like in my mind, it would, for me at least, whenever I shit on myself, it's like, oh, there's something that I did that it's not sitting with me in the important way. So like this guy at the aquarium, like it just felt like I was being way too, I don't know, self-aggrandizing. Is that the right word? I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. Like I was just being
Kind of
too,
flippant, like a little bit.
yeah. And I don't really
Um,
know him that way, but like he says he likes that, but I really don't have that rapport with him. So it's like, it just was a reminder for me, like, I don't think that like I should be joking with him like that. Cause I also don't
mhm,
like joking like that, but like I thought that's what he would want. And it just
mhm.
didn't feel good in my body to say that kind of stuff. So, I think that for me, it's like the feeling was very valid and I had the action. And then like my next time I would do it, I probably would say something different or I would choose to do it differently. And I think that for me, that's just what this time of being able to process your feelings is really, really hard. Like, and so like, however you can process them, that's why repair is so important because you
I
can't
think I
always
just
predict
jumped
your first
over
response.
I jumped over the processing. I had a lot
Yeah.
going on this last 2 weeks, so I just jumped over the processing till this exact freaking moment. So there we go, people. We all got to process my little
We're
thing.
doing it
Woo
in real
woo.
time.
Real freaking
No, but
time.
I think this is important though. Like, Michelle, I think this is really important because this is what real people go through. So,
Well,
this is
I'm so glad I'm a
it's
real
like
person.
real.
I'm a
I
real
know. Thank
girl.
God. You're a real girl, Michelle. You're not AI. You're real.
What the point I was trying to make though is that I think it's the reason why having a therapist sometimes is helpful because it forces you to stop and like
Mm,
have that hour to yourself with them at some point to go
mm-hmm.
through these things, right? And so I think part of what I'm seeing in this book though is that this idea that you're going to be able to identify and decide if these things are really important or not is
Mm-hmm.
interesting because I think it's really coming from a place of I should make sure that Josh should have to get up and be here and be on time and blah blah blah, and that means that he's not going to finish college, and then he's going to
Mm-hmm.
not da, 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 and like take that logical illogical thing all the way out. And that part is the part that I need to process more again and again, because it yes, I was hungry, but the reason I got so animated about it, I think, with him was just this idea that you're not going to be a dependable adult.
Mm.
And so if you're not a dependable adult, then what does that mean for a lot of parts of your life? And I think that fear is there.
Yeah.
And I think that goes back to the very beginning of what you were saying, which is that this idea of, you know, adulting is parenting yourself. And what does it mean to be an adult? And is having to be reliable and showing up on time. That is one of the things I think that people talk about a lot with adulthood, right? And jobs. And
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't know
but this
that
is also like,
that I know, and that's why I'm saying I don't know that that's fair, right?
yeah.
But that is a big one. Like if we're saying there's nothing about, I forget which one you said that like that wasn't part of adult. Oh, your dog is overweight. Like nobody gives you a hard time about that. Your
Mm-hmm.
kid's overweight, they give you a hard time about that. Like you're not a good adult and you're not a good parent because you let your kid eat too much.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's like these things that kind of go back and forth between the shoulds of a parent and the shoulds of an adult. And boy, we're doing a number on all of ourselves with this.
Yeah.
Like that isn't fair, right? That isn't necessarily, or is it really important? Is it
Yeah,
really
because
that
like
important?
when I heard you saying that he's not going to be a dependable adult, I just like it was like,
That's my
oh,
fear. That's my
I
fear.
know. And that's like, but that's
Yeah.
also like the thing that it kind of triggered me a little bit because it's like, yeah, everyone, like, I've been told that I'm not dependable. And it's
Right.
like, but like when shit hits the fan, like, I'm going to be the most dependable person that you know.
100%. 100%.
And, and like, yeah, sometimes I'm not always on time, which is hard. Like I'm working at it. And it doesn't mean that I don't love and respect the person. It's just like, it's
But
so
it's
hard. Yeah.
a brain-based disorder that he's not wrong in saying that if this is going to be an expectation you're going to have of me, I'm probably going to disappoint you again. But it's not
Yeah.
him disappointing me, it's his brain doesn't allow for that to happen in the same way. And it's an unfair expectation to put on him because
Yeah.
it would be
Well, cuz
a,
I just
somebody
go
like,
back to like, sorry. I go back to like the person who's in like a wheelchair, and it's like
yes.
if you were to say like, you're going to disappoint me every time that you can't walk up these stairs.
Yes, that's the point I was exactly gonna say. I was literally going to use that exact example.
Oh my gosh. We're melding, Michelle. Our brain,
Melding
not
our
only are
no,
our voice is the same, our brains are the same.
but it's our grandmother, right? She was in a
Mm,
wheelchair for all of our lives, and so, you would never even ask this of her,
yeah.
and because you would know that this was not gonna happen, and so it's like, that's what I'm saying is the complexity of this, is that
Mm,
even once you know that this is something that cannot be expected. It's not a should, it is a
mm,
cannot. And that because that cannot happen, there's no amount of work that our grandmother would have been able to do to be able to walk up those stairs.
yeah.
And so I think that is similar in this case, at least with Josh's, brain, is that that's what a brain-based disorder means. It's not like you're going to get better at it. It's like that's always going to be something that's going to be a limitation, and that's okay. Like we never thought about her as her body
Mhm.
solely, right? We didn't think about her, but that's harder with the brain.
That this is why this subject is so challenging and why we're like almost 100 episodes in because you know, I remember this distinctly in sound design. It was like
Mm.
of all the things that you could design in theater, um people like sound designers had the worst time because it was like everyone has a pair of ears. And so they're like, I must be a sound designer because I have a pair of ears and I can hear that this is not right or wrong. And everyone's got a decision. Everyone has an opinion
Mhm.
because they all have ears. And
Mhm.
whereas like you don't, people look at like the set or they look at like the costumes and they're like, well, I can't do that, but I can hear that. So I have a decision. I have an opinion. And
Mhm.
it's like everyone's got a brain. So it's like, well, so it feels like there's this unfair expectation that, because everyone has a brain, well, I have a brain, you have a brain, so our brains should all work exactly the same. Whereas, like, if I can physically see that you can't walk, then okay,
Yeah.
I can make an
Yeah.
assumption. But I'm sure there's probably even people who still find that annoying, and that's a problem for them.
Well,
But
the thing I can tell you with dyslexia is I'm never going to be able to spell things the same way.
mhm,
And my brain will just flip the letters. Now I can't tell you, like, some days if I'm tired, it's worse or whatever, right? But I can't tell you which word I'm gonna get wrong always, but I'm gonna tell you that there's gonna be some that I still to this day can never spell correctly. So, and that's been the same since I was little till now. It hasn't changed. It's a brain-based disorder, and it's not gonna get better as far as I know, like, unless there's
yeah.
something I don't know about rewiring the brain that could
It
come,
just
right? Who
feels
knows?
like, and the thing that's hard is like, and I don't know if this is true or not, but like my initial thought of that is like, well, okay, but like, when it comes to spelling, people don't get as upset, and maybe they do.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm totally wrong, but like it's like the difference of like you can never spell properly versus like
Mhm.
you're never going to be reliable. It's like, oh, I just like,
Right. No,
why
this
do
is
I have to
exactly
be
what
the unreliable one?
I know, no, but this is exactly what I'm saying. Like when we talked about this whole business, right, of like us starting a
Hmm.
podcast. And I think we had episodes the last couple of weeks where like it just didn't get done, right? The editing
Yeah.
piece, because it's a lot what you do. And you do such a brilliant job with it. And I think you made some little short things and you're like, well, this is what this is. This is how this works. This is
Yeah.
ADHD. And I thought that was so beautiful that you did it that way. And it really should be how we handle life, right? We should,
You know,
I mean, should's the wrong word, I guess, but I would like it
no.
if we could change this idea that it would be the same, the sense of like, okay, the spelling, and maybe it's that the spelling isn't someone's not reliant on my spelling, right? Whereas like there's a bit of a relationship
Yeah.
component sometimes when something doesn't happen. But at the same time, it's like we used to have to like lift our grandmother up the stairs to take her into places. It caused us to have to do something more than we would have had she had
Hmm.
legs that, you know, were more functioning. So I think we need to think of it that way somehow, right? I don't know. I don't know the
Well,
right
when
thing
you're
to
when you're
this is
talking about yeah, when you're talking about like your dyslexia, it feels like as you've gotten older, you've gotten more comfortable with it.
totally
And like
100%.
it's
Yeah.
like this is what's going to happen and I'm
Yeah.
not going to apologize for it.
Yeah.
And I think that like when I talk about like my friend Jenza, so anybody who's new, I have a good friend named Jenza who is like my awesome friend who lives nearby, and she's been like listening to the podcast and like being so loving and helping me to like understand how to have like an adult friendship with a female
Mhm.
as a person
Mm.
with ADHD. And so I don't
So
ever have to apologize to her.
yes.
And I was thinking about like this whole should thing, and it actually ties back into the little small episodes I've been doing on this podcast. I realized the last two times I've apologized for the fact that I didn't
Mhm.
show up and have a
Mhm.
full one. But like, what if instead of like, because I was shooting on myself, right? So
Mhm.
what if instead of shooting on myself, I say, okay, guys, so going forward, there will be weeks where you'll get like a 1 or 2 minute podcast, and I'm gonna have something ridiculously fun and loving to say to you guys, and then that's gonna be it. And
Mhm.
it's not like I'm not coming at it from like apologizing. I'm coming at it from like, this is what's gonna happen. I don't know
Yeah.
when it's going to happen. How exciting. Because like every time you open up the app, like, is it going to be a full episode? Is it not? Like, it's a fun little,
It
who
could be a
knows?
moose bouche, a
Yes.
little something. Mm-hmm.
But then, maybe that's part of it. And I don't know if this is what I'm feeling at the moment, is that when there's the should,
Yeah.
how can I stop apologizing? Like okay, sorry. I have a should in my head. First question is, what's important to me?
Mm-hmm.
Second question is this something that my brain-based disorder can actually change, or is it just part of that brain-based disorder?
Yes.
And third, if how can I repair that in my life? So if it's part of my brain-based disorder, then I have to not apologize for it and I have to own it. If it is
Mm-hmm.
something that is not, and it's also something that's important to me, then I have to own it in a different way.
Yeah.
But it's like I have to own that I have to like make a change. But like I think there's certain parts of it where it's like, okay, there are things that I have to be okay with. Like I'm probably never going to be 100% on time. I might get there and be on time most of the time, but there's always that possibility that like I might be late.
Yeah.
And I got to have friends who are okay with that.
Yeah.
And so like I'm not going to feel bad if I lose a friend because I didn't show up on time. It's like, great, now we both know that we're not compatible. Awesome. I'm not going to shit all over myself like I need to like
And
get
I think
better at
that's true
this.
with like other parents. Like when
Yeah.
you have kids and you're like, okay, they're completely inflexible or not okay with that. Well, then that probably means that we're not meant to be as a group getting together with, kids and
Mhm.
whatever. Yeah.
And this is why being in high school and grade school and like just being in school in general is so hard, especially when you're in a
Yeah.
small school, because the
Yeah.
pool of candidates, of friendship candidates, are so
Very small.
small.
Yes.
So if you don't jive with those people, then like
Yeah.
you're
You're up the
screwed
creek.
for the
You're
rest
up the
of
creek. Yeah.
your up shit's creek. Okay. You're just there. And like,
Yeah.
and then that's the thing is like, I know for me, like, I always felt like, oh, there's something wrong with me. And it's like, no, there's nothing wrong with me. There's just this connection didn't work out and there's no other candidates. That's all
Yeah.
it is.
That's all it
Has
means.
nothing to do with you. It just, the
Yeah.
candidates, the pool is very small.
Yeah.
And like, can we just say, it's okay. It's okay that you don't have friends here. It doesn't mean you're never going to make friends. It just
Yeah.
means you're not going to necessarily have a friend here. That's okay. We're going to go over here after school and we're going to find friends over here. Because
Mhm.
the candidate pool at the school is just not, it's not big enough. But we're going to go to a different pool and we're going to make sure that you find a good buddy.
Yeah. I like the idea of a candidate pool because
Yeah.
it does act like selection versus like,
Yes.
there's something wrong with you for not connecting. I want to go back just for a second though to say I I I'm I think as we're talking about this, what really hit me was this idea of identifying not just the shoulds, but what are the things in the complex situation that cannot change or will not change,
Yeah.
are not likely to change, right? And we talked
Yeah.
about this in the last episode of like, this is going to follow you into adulthood. It follows your kid into adulthood. So, what is it, and how do we identify those things too,
Mm.
so that we can keep them in the forefront of our mind? It is easy to see when somebody is in a wheelchair what their particular limitations are. It is
Mm.
not easy to see that well, it's easy to see I'm dyslexic when you watch what I've written, and I'm sure if you went and actually looked, you'd be like,
Well,
oh. And
wouldn't necessarily know that you're dyslexic, but
I would erase a lot. I look
yeah.
things up a lot. I probably look things up like 20, 30 times a day on Google to
Mm.
see how to spell something. Thank God for Google now. So
Michelle,
I'm
you can just go into your watch and be like, how do you spell anti-disestablishmentarianism? And
oh,
then it will show you the
great.
actual phrase.
I love it. So now I have a new tool, which I'm like super excited about. So
Yeah.
I think this idea though, that I have to remember this idea of timeliness, like, and
Mm.
that there is no butler to wake him up and do these things, is like, it's always going to be that way. And so, and I don't mean to say he can't do some things for himself, but there will always be a chance he's not going to be where he's supposed to be because his brain hasn't let him, reminded him to go, right? And so
Yeah.
I think that that piece of it isn't to say like that's a judgment, it's just an observation that is true, right? It's just an actual thing that I think is true. And so I don't know. I mean, that's kind of where I take it, as like, what are those truths that are just going to, like, this isn't because they don't care.
Yeah.
This isn't because they don't want to pick you up, or that they don't think you're a great parent or an okay parent or whatever. It's that there is this actual limitation that they have that's going to continue to be one. And how do you own it? How do you help them own it, but also not berate them for it? I just think,
I feel like that should be our next episode, is like walking through what these things are that actually are the brain-based disorders. Like what, because I feel like it's such a good question that you're asking. And, it's like here, I don't know if it's like the past that's like, when I hear you say like, he'll never have a butler and like never have these things, like it just, my instinct is like, oh, but maybe it is true. Like maybe, like, I think that would be such a good thing for us to kind of like process, like what are the things that, like, on average most ADHD people are going to have a hard time doing, like that they can't walk up a flight of stairs, like, or they, whatever that equivalent is. Cause I don't think that I've accepted a lot of the things that are in my brain that happen.
yeah.
And I feel like if
Huh.
we could like talk
So like
through
the
those,
whole,
then
like all the things from the last 2 years that we went through would be a good thing to go back through, right?
should have. Yes, because that's how long it takes me to process this shit, Michelle. No, but like oh
Oh, but I think that's interesting though.
yeah,
I
because like
mean,
when we're talking about shooting on ourselves, like part of it
yeah.
is like there is this instinction, like what this instinct inherent feeling, like when you say Josh will never, like I think to myself like I will never, and then I'm like, oh, I get really like my butthole clenches. I'm like, oh, I don't think I like that idea. I don't know, like, is that,
Yeah.
so
I
I feel
well,
like
I
I need
remember
to,
I've said this before, and I've kinda get the same reaction, so that would be good for us to go through, because I think it helps me as a parent to say,
yeah,
"This is not something that I need to fix in him,
yeah, and I think that's maybe
because
that
he
would
is
be an
exactly
interesting,
perfect as he is, and
yeah,
this is something I need to remember, and this is something that I need to, like, navigate around and adjust for."
mm,
Because it's not going to change. His brain is
right,
not going to fundamentally change. Now, he may get more mature with how he responds to things. He may get more,
yeah,
you know what I mean, like capable in different things. Like he's better at setting his alarm now to wake up. But
mm-hmm.
he's like, the other day, I was like, Josh, you haven't gotten yourself up the last 3 days. And he's like, oh, yeah, I think I need to find my alarm again. And I went into
Yeah,
his room and it was literally like under a pillow. I mean, it wasn't
yeah,
lost, it was just under a
out of sight,
pillow,
out of mind.
out of sight, out of
But it
mind.
no,
He
but it
no
is lost to him. It
it
was
is
lost
lost
to
to him
him.
because he has no object permanence, which was like a
Yeah.
phrase that one of his little friends at school said, and I to this day, like, I was like the most classic thing I've ever heard a kid say, "That boy, he has no object permanence." And and I was like, I hadn't even heard the phrase before, and I was like, "What? Tell this is what this is. Oh, there's a thing. Oh my
The
god.
thing.
He's lost 20 water bottles. Like, what are we doing?" So this is, I mean, it is not going, that is never changed in him.
Yeah.
He has fewer things. That's what he
Mhm.
learned for himself, is I'm gonna have fewer things, but it's never, I don't know, it's not gonna change. So it's like, if it's not gonna change, like, it's like you're a paraplegic and that's not gonna change. There's nothing that's gonna fix that at this moment that we know of with science or whatever. Like, how do you
Yeah.
own it? My brain isn't gonna change. It's only gonna degrade and get worse for me.
Oh
So
god.
with my
Only gonna
dyslexia,
turn
but
into a pile of soup at the end.
But right. So it's like,
But I think,
it's
and I
like,
think there are ways to like talk about it and say it and just be a reminder of like, look, it's not like you're not broken. Like I think it's
broken.
also about like, because like our society has such harsh things to say when we're saying like I don't have a butler, I don't have this
Yeah.
ability. It's like you're not broken. Your brain just has like this is something your brain doesn't do, and that's okay. You're
Yeah.
not broken. And I think it's about like
Saying it
finding the
differently than you're never
phrasing.
going.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
because like
Okay.
you're
I
never
got,
going to is a
okay.
little
Okay. All right. I
little
should have done it
harsh,
differently.
Michelle. Yes, you should have. So now we're gonna ask, is it important to you? And if it is, then we'll talk about it. If it's not, then like tell me to go myself. It's fine.
No, it is important. It is important. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but that's the thing is like I think it's
So
important
what
for
I
me too.
hear
That's
you
why I'm
saying
hearing it.
is the way I'm saying it sucks, but the
Yes.
concept might be valid.
Yeah, no, the concept is totally valid. I'm like, I think that it's just the way it's being brought up. Cause
And I
like
think
I'm
that's
hearing it, I'm like,
actually a whole thing in her book is about language. So we will get to
okay.
this. We promise people, we will get to this for sure. So she has some, I think, really good strategies coming ahead, and hopefully it will help me be less shitty.
It's something we all need to be a little less shitty.
100%. Well, I
Yeah.
love you. Thank you.
I love you too.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the Spicy Brain Podcast, brought to you by Spicy Brain Studios. This week we got spicy with Shedding the Shoulds from The Essential Guide to Raising a Complex Kid by Elaine Taylor Klaus. Because honestly, who needs them? Next week we're talking about saying no to holding on to resentment, and maybe even saying yes to acceptance. We'll see how deep we get, but you know how that usually goes with us. Make sure to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. And if you're enjoying the show, leaving us a review or a star rating really helps other neurospicy folks find their way here too. But until then, here's to a great end of the week. And remember to stay curious
And joyful.
with a whole lot of radical acceptance. High kick.
You funny.
Wait, Dad.